baby, I wrote a song with Larry Goss that she would sing to you called Hold On to the Years. So,
that's such a killer song. Killer song.
Well, thank you. Larry was a pretty amazing gift to our entire industry. And to get to write with him a few times.
That's one of my professional regrets, I guess, is that I never got to work with him. And I knew him. My family's known him for years, but it just never worked out for us to get to work together. But I've always been such a fan and an admirer of his.
Yeah, he was one of the few guys in our industry that his sound became you just call it, you're going to go Goss.
Defined a generation of gospel music, and it was a trademark. You knew exactly what you were going to get from him, but at the same time, it was fresh every time he did it.
Yeah,
that's a rarity.
Dusty, so when did you first meet Lauren? Do you remember?
I do.
We've probably got a picture of it.
I do have a great picture. In fact, I'm going to find it so we can put it up.
I would love to have that.
We both looked a little different back then.
A little. She was adorable. She still is adorable.
She was?
No, she knows she's one of my favorite. Well, she knows that her mom is one of my favorite singers.
I'm more than happy to bow to the queen. I mean, who doesn't love my mother?
And I always loved seeing Lauren. For years, when I'd see the Talleys there at a show or something, I'd always say, Lauren, I'll come back, but I'm going to go hug your mom first. Am I right?
It's understandable.
But I love Lauren, and I bet we met. My daughter is 40.
Wow, you're old.
And I've known Lauren since she was a little girl. I have a great picture. Word hired me years and years ago before I actually worked for Word to go out and do these little promotional campaigns. And the Talleys, I think they had just brought out the record United. It's where they're in the purple suit. They were one of my favorite covers of Kirk, Roger, and Deborah. They're in these wild, great suits, and it looked fresh. And I went out and for 3 or 4 dates, we did little meet and greets with music pastors in Muncie, Indiana, Bowling Green, Kentucky, and then we ended up here for a thing called the People's Choice Awards that was around just a couple of years. And Lauren was just a little tot, but she was precious. And we sat on the bus and talked. And I've known her a long time. I've been a fan of the Talleys since before those days. Those first records are some of my favorite records. So I've watched Lauren grow into this most incredible, beautiful, wonderful, anointed person through all these years. And I've seen her at the studio at times. I've seen her at the Word Studios when she would come in and write. And I've just loved watching her grow up.
That's so kind of you.
So you did grow up.
Eventually. It took a while.
Dave's going to bring it there.
Oh, yeah. We can always count on Dave to take it there.
Hey, I'm just, I'm trying to keep it real, trying to keep it honest.
That's good.
But you know what? We laugh about that. But one of the things that almost everybody we've talked to on these episodes, there's a finite place we remember, okay, they were starting their career, or it was on your first record, or the first time you were in the studio, and we met, and the friendship began there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And with Lauren, it's almost like the closest thing I can think of off the top of my head is like a Caroline Kennedy in politics, that she literally was on camera from the time she was born.
I guess that's true.
And it's so interesting because I'd see her every year. I'd go for a year or so, but I've always felt like I've always known her, and then our friendship has just grown.
You know what's interesting is, from my perspective, I've been around this music all of my life, and so I don't actually remember meeting most people that I know. It's just like I've always known them, and they've always been there, and we've always been friends, which, when you think about it, is a really, really neat way to develop relationships. Because Christian music is and should be a really big family.
Yes, and I didn't know where you were headed with that.
It is that way for a lot of us. These people are your family, and sometimes those relationships are closer than maybe your biological family members.
I agree.
Because you see them more, you interact with them more. And so those
And
relationships
you're
are just special.
around them 5 days a week. And your family 2 days a week. So.
I was thinking this morning as I was driving over here, I thought, I remember when Kirk, out of the blue, I was working for the Rambos. It was in between, it was right before I went to work full time for the Word. But Kirk had called me, and it was when he was going off of the road. We had a good visit, and he said, "Wait till you hear Lauren." I can still remember this. We didn't have cell phones, and I can even tell you I was at a telephone booth, and he told me to call him.
No way.
Yes. And he said, "Wait till you hear Lauren." And I remember him comparing you to some of the greatest female vocalists.
That's
and I
amazing.
thought, how could this be? And then I started hearing her.
And so how do you...
And then watching her grow to where she's at today. One of the most loved female vocalists in our genre.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite singers for females. And it was just, I was thinking about this today. I thought, it's very cool to see this come around.
Yes.
To where it's at.
I appreciate that.
And let's talk for a minute about, okay, it's the first time on video. And Lauren, you have balloons behind you. And
it's very festive.
Very festive. It just has got happy written all over the room.
Exactly right. Happy is what
and that's what I walked in and I went, wow. Yeah. So tell our listeners a little bit about why we're in this room and what we've been doing today before we got here.
Well, Dave and Dusty and I are all friends of a nonprofit organization here in Gallatin, Tennessee area called Veranda Ministries. You may have heard us talk about them before. They meet the needs and minister to patients who are battling Alzheimer's and dementia and various other issues. They meet their needs during the week. They're a respite care program for those patients, but they also are a fantastic support for the families and the caregivers of these people. They allow the family members or the caregivers to have a break for a while, be able to renew and replenish their own energy and do what they need to do for a while. And the clients come in, the patients come in for a few hours for about 3 or 4 days every week, and they have activities for them. They have church, they have music, and it's a really, really interactive, very positive, engaging environment for these people. And I've just really never seen anything like the level of compassion and care that Veranda Ministries gives to these people. And we have been friends of the Veranda for a long time, since its inception 12 years ago. And so we are here at the Veranda today while a video shoot is happening in downtown Gallatin. A lot of other friends of the Veranda are downtown shooting video for some special events for the Veranda that will take place later this year.
So cool.
Dave and Dusty got theirs done already. Yes. So after we do this, then I'm going to go do mine. So I hope you guys didn't say all of the good things. I hope you left a little something for me to say.
I don't know that many good things, so I think you're probably pretty safe. One of just thinking about it again today, driving over here, knowing that we can do that, and that's a pretty special thing to me. And there's a song that I don't remember writing. It just kind of came out. It was about my mother-in-law's battle with Alzheimer's, and it's called The Story of Alice and Bill. Mm-hmm. And knowing that I was going to sing a little bit of that today, and you start reliving that journey, and then knowing we were coming here with you, and one of the things that hit me was, you may remember what conference this was, but it was in the basement of the Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg Civic Center right downtown Gatlinburg. It was a Southern Gospel event, but I came over to hear just because I heard the Talleys were going to sing, and Karen was there, and I love Karen, and whoever else was on that night, I'm sure I loved them too. I just don't remember who they were. But that night, you and I sat at a table, and we talked for a long time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you said was that you were going to start a podcast.
Yeah. That never did happen. So I figured I'd just piggyback onto yours.
Come on.
Well, and at that point, we had no plans to do that. And just the irony that here we are sitting here, we're doing a podcast together, but it's not the way I would have envisioned it, or probably you would. But the other interesting conversation that night was I talked to your mom, and the reason I was there is you were going to do a song that Bernadette had written, and we'll maybe get into that a little bit later, but I wanted to hear you do that. So I ended up behind the record table talking to your mom, and she began to talk to me about her best friend named Marianne. And this building, this room that we're sitting in, she told me that that was her passion, and that if I ever got the chance to come up here, and it's just kind of a full circle moment on a lot of levels.
Oh, yeah.
And then one more Veranda story is this past summer, they do like a carnival or fundraiser, and I told Marianne I'd do anything I could to help.
You got to be really careful when you say stuff like that.
I learned
Real
that.
careful,
So
real
she
careful.
sends me an email and says that I will be part of the dunking booth,
Oh, yeah.
and I will be going against Dusty Wells. So
Wow.
I'm not sure how that worked out.
Who raised the most money?
I honestly don't know.
I never showed up. So
Dusty wins by default then.
By default. I've done that a few times.
So
I've
have
done
I.
some crazy.
That water be cold when you
both
first
of us
hit
have
it.
done this numerous times. Y'all think it sounds real easy. It'd be real
You
cold.
know what? Getting
Oh,
knocked down into the water
and
isn't so bad.
It's
It's climbing back out. After
We have
you do
talked-
that 2 or 3 times, you're like, okay.
We have talked about that numerous times
Yeah.
and watched your mother look at us like we're idiots.
So has Deb ever done it? Has she ever been?
I don't think she has.
I think maybe we take that on as a united goal for this.
You
company.
can if you want to.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not.
So you grew up literally on the stage in front of the camera on many levels, but I remember the first song that I just went, oh my gosh, I love this group. It was called Typical Day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And from the intro of the song, I was hooked, and I went, and then I'm a sucker for family harmony.
Yeah.
So when you replace Kirk,
Yep.
they replaced one family member with another, and you didn't lose a thing, but gained, I started to say gained a range, but I think you and Kirk sing the same range. So
We really did. You know what's funny is it kind of seems that way, but I actually didn't replace him. At that time, when the first incarnation of the Talleys left the road in 1993, I was 10 years old. And at that time, I just told my age on a podcast. That was not right.
I'll make sure that we send out a special link to verify that as well.
So at that time, Mom and Dad just felt really strongly that the Lord was leading them to come off the road for a while and spend some time at home.
I'd forgotten about that.
They did not know what they were going to do.
Yeah.
They didn't have jobs lined up.
Yeah.
Wow.
They didn't. I mean, they left at the height of their careers,
And
I did not appreciate everything that went into that until just a few short years ago.
Sure.
But they just felt like that's what God was asking them to do, so they made that decision. The first version of the Talleys retired in 1993. Kirk kept on traveling as a soloist.
Yep.
We spent the next 3 years at home. Dad did real estate. He worked in the recording studio. He produced projects for other artists. And my mom went back to school for a while. And, we did normal stuff, like go to church on Sunday. Mom sang in the church choir.
Wow.
And I was in school for 5 days a week for the first time ever. And I was not a fan of that at all. I couldn't even, I'm like, why do I have to do this? I really liked the setup I had going. but they really felt strongly, and they didn't fully understand all the reasons why the Lord wanted them to do that. But they felt very, very sure that God had another purpose for it. Well, it was during this time between ages 10 and 13 for me that I became more interested in singing for myself. Now, I had always sung. The first time that I ever came on stage, I was 2 years old, and I got away from the babysitter one night, and I ran up on stage and interrupted their song and announced that I wanted to sing. And they let me, which I think is amazing. But
well, yeah, they kind of had to at that point.
Yeah, there's no way out of that. But I would always come up and sing on their concerts when I was a child. But it wasn't until that particular time when I pursued it more seriously and became more and more interested in it. And so during that time, Mom and Dad just wanted to encourage me and give me an outlet to try to practice my skills a little bit, I guess. And a banker in our town called us one Christmas and said, "Hey, we're having a Christmas banquet over here at the bank. Can you guys come sing a few songs for it?"
Wow.
I was that was the Christmas I was 12.
And that would have been what year?
Your audience can do math, Dave. Don't insult their intelligence.
Yeah.
You're an awful person.
He is. Okay. He is awful.
The share survey.
So we were like,
Just remember, I do the editing on these.
Yeah,
so
I know.
be careful.
So we threw together a few songs. My dad said, "Hey, Lauren, can you learn Kirk's part to our arrangement of Sleigh Ride?"
Wow.
Yeah, okay, sure. So I learned the part. We sang. We didn't even know an hour's worth of music. We just threw together a few songs and we sang for the Christmas banquet for the bank in our town, and thought nothing of it. Well, then our church asked us to do something, and then another church asked us, and we didn't think anything about it. We had no intentions of starting another group.
Wow.
But it just kind of snowballed, and the Lord, of course, opened doors and provided opportunities. And in true gospel singer fashion, my dad was like, "Well, if we're going to go out and sing, we're going to have something to sell." So we went in the studio and recorded a little custom album and little table project.
What was the first project you did as family?
Oh, it was self-titled The Talley Trio, Roger, Deborah, and Lauren. It was not.
Was that result of a committee meeting, that title? Is that?
We tried to figure out what to call ourselves because we thought if we call ourselves the Talleys,
right,
people are going to think that Roger, Deborah, and Kirk are back together.
Right. Yep, you're exactly.
So didn't want to do that. Just, so people wouldn't get the wrong idea and think that Kirk was hanging up his solo career, because he was doing really well at that point.
Yeah, he was.
So we had to call it something, and 13-year-old me did not think the Talley Trio was cool.
I knew you were going to say that. Why did I know
I was not a fan of that. But what else are you going to do? I mean, you had to pick something. So we did this table project, and it wasn't widely distributed or anything. There's probably some floating around at some yard sale somewhere.
I'd be looking for one of those.
Yeah.
There's some copies floating around somewhere.
I hear a challenge, Dusty.
I know. Let's see who can find it first.
So the first record that was the label
was the So Thankful record on Crossroads.
Right.
That was the next one. And man, I was just in love with music of all kinds.
I remember people,
and I wanted to sing whatever kind of music I heard that I liked. And I would try so many different kinds of things. I listened to everything under the sun. And I have to credit my parents with that. They exposed me to lots of great art from lots of different genres of music.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like fast Southern gospel and slow Southern gospel.
No, they educated me about good quality music and how to judge what a good song is and what it is not, and what makes this a good song. And they really taught me to appreciate quality. And I'm glad for that.
Yeah. Kirk, what I love about Kirk is he says what he's honest. He's honest.
Sometimes too honest, but yes.
But I remember who he compared Lauren to. I remember he said, she is, and please, I hope you may have to edit this, she is a white Whitney Houston.
Wow.
I still remember that as clear as day.
That's and then really high praise. And
but it's
I don't know about
she likes all styles. I remember him clearly saying, Dusty, you're going to love her. She's a white Whitney Houston.
I tried to sing everything that I liked, and most of it was way beyond my depth. But I had a voice teacher tell me very early on, whatever you like, just try it. Yeah. You might fall on your face. You might crack. It might not work out. But give it a shot. Don't talk yourself out of it before you do it. And that really gave me a boost to reach beyond what I felt comfortable with.
Did you ever feel, and Dave, I know you have tons of questions too. Did you ever feel your mother, she was one of the greatest singers, greatest singers. I mean, every time she'd step on stage, people just, that alto, that richness. Did you ever feel intimidated by her?
No. my voice was completely different from hers. Yep. And my style was different from hers. Yeah. The one thing I remember being really, really young and wondering this, when you're a teenager, you don't even know all the questions you should be asking. But I remember thinking everybody just loves her and is so moved when she sings. What is that? What is that? I love it. What's the thing that she has that makes that happen? I didn't really understand that until I was much, much older. Yeah. It wasn't just her singing. It was her spirit and her heart, and people connected with that, and they still do.
They still do.
She sings. She's got that ability to sing like she's sitting across the table talking to you.
Communicator.
And she tells a story, even if the song isn't a story song.
I think that's her greatest gift as a communicator. Yes, her voice is extreme. My mama does not, to this day, know how good she is and was. She doesn't think anything about herself. She just doesn't. And if you told her that today, she would, oh, well, I don't know about it. She's that way.
That sounds just like
and
her.
I love that about her. But but I do think that's probably her greatest gift is instantly she makes you feel like you've made a friend.
Wow.
And it comes through on stage. It comes through when she's singing a song. And I've always admired that and wanted to do that myself as a communicator. And that's a long lesson to learn. At least it was for me. And it took some time and some life.
I started to say it's not something you learn as much as you grow into. You develop. So that, I mean, there is you inherited a lot of trust equity with the audience because so that's something a lot of new artists don't start out with.
That's true.
So everybody was pulling for you, and I mean I remember when Kirk did his first, I think it was his first solo record. He was such a great songwriter, and I got a cut on that record called "When the Service Begins." Do you remember that song?
I do.
It's a good song.
And it was like, I just got a Kirk Talley cut. I mean, that was a big deal.
That was a big deal. Yeah.
And then watching you guys find your stride, and you became one of those artists that everybody began to watch for the records. And I think
that's true.
It was because of what you're talking about, the integrity of good songs, and it just everybody loves a family that gets along.
Well, and then you started,
which is not all family.
That is true. That's really true. But then you started watching Lauren do the communication part of it. The thing that Kirk was so masterful and still one of the best, to me, one of the best communicators. We've said it all for years, all of us in this industry has. But all of a sudden you see Lauren step out and start introducing the songs. I remember watching her at Quartet Convention on that big stage and watching her do the introductions and stuff. And I thought, there she is.
But I've had the blessing of learning from so many people. My greatest examples have always been literally right in front of me my whole life. When you're younger, you don't fully appreciate that. They're just mom and dad and your uncle and, who cares? But the older you get, the more you realize that these are your best models to follow.
Yes.
Yeah. And I find myself at this point in my career probably deliberately gleaning more from them than I ever did when I was younger. Because now I'm at a place in my life where they were at that time when they were the most successful. And I'm going, I want to understand everything about how you did this.
And at your mother's age, you may not have that much longer to learn from her. So,
wow.
Oh, Deborah.
You just called my mother old.
Deborah, that was Dave Clark. That was not Dusty.
Hey, we're on camera. Man. We're on camera now.
Dusty, that's right. Me and you may need to continue this, just me and you.
And the reason I said
Dave,
that.
You're in trouble.
It's been nice knowing you, Dave.
This morning when I ran into Deb, the first thing she said was, I listen to your podcast every episode. So,
that's over with now.
Yeah. Well, so I thought, as long as she's listening, I'll just slide that in there just for her.
Dave Clark. That's funny.
But yeah, you do. You start thinking of all the things you want to be sure and ask them.
Yes.
You can't ask them all the things. Yeah. There's no way. You're always going to come up with something else.
Your dad sent me an email a couple of weeks ago, and he said, hey, there was some kind of pitch that went through to a group that he's working with, and it was a song you and Don wrote, and it was shortly after Don had passed. And he said, "If it's okay, we still want to cut that." And it was like, because for a writer, every cut is a big deal. I don't care how much.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's interesting.
Absolutely.
So you get just as excited about a cut from an artist that nobody's heard of.
Yes. In fact, years ago, I know I'm on camera and I may have to edit this out, but years ago, I quit looking at royalty statements. And the reason was I didn't want what somebody sold to affect whether or not I pitched a song to them.
Wow.
And
that really speaks well of you.
Yes, it does.
Well,
I'm going to take back the things I've said about you.
take half of them back, because half of them are probably earned. And you know what? The very first cut that I ever had, there were two cuts that happened at the same time, and one was on the Cathedrals record, on the Sunshine and Roses record, and then a local family group from right here in town. They had a big family with all the kids and grandkids. There were probably 30 of them on the cover. They cut a song that actually got cut first, and all I knew was I was going to get to play one of those on vinyl. And you know who the Cathedrals are.
Yeah.
But the other group, the guitar player, one of the little grandkids for that group, is sitting here running audio today.
What?
That's they're called the Break Family.
Awesome.
And
Wow.
so yes, yes, you want the good cuts, but honestly anymore, I started doing that way before COVID. But when everything began to go digital, and part of it is I don't know how to gauge anything except you cut a song of mine and I'm thrilled. So that,
you know what, though, that's a scriptural principle. We've been called to be faithful in the little things just as much as in the big things, if not more so.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for an artist that performs.
Yeah.
It's my job to be just as faithful singing to a very small crowd as it is on stage in front of thousands. If I don't give a few people the same quality interaction as
and
what a big crowd would get, they know it. And not only have I let them down, but I got to answer to him for that.
Right.
Because he expects me to be faithful regardless.
Yeah. So we told a story on an episode a couple weeks ago about you being in Gatlinburg, and you'd come as a favor to me to sing. What were you coming to sing? I'm sorry. You were coming to sing
I sang When the Answer is No, Bernadette's song.
Right.
Yeah.
And we were also doing a song that day written by two 12-year-old kids. And as you're walking on the platform.
That was a good day. That day worked out great.
Yeah. As you're walking on the platform, you said, "Has anybody cut that song?" I said, "Not yet, but it sounds like somebody's going to."
So that day I was there to sing When the Answer is No. Lillinus had just put out a print version of that, and the Talleys had just recorded it. So I came over to sing the song. And right after that, these two 12-year-old boys got up, and they were going to debut their new song that they had written. They were going to debut it to 500 worship leaders. And it was two little boys.
And it was, and I think Cliff
Duran's son, Mac, is one of them.
He actually played the piano or something, I think, that day.
Yeah. And they got up and sang, "Glorious, glorious God, wonderful maker." And I looked back at Cliff, I went, "Has anybody cut?" He went, "No." I said, "Can I have it?" He said, "Sure." So that was the title of my next album, my worship album, Glorious God.
And it did pretty good for you.
Yep.
It did great.
And those lyrics in that song should not have been written by a 12-year-old. It's too good.
It's just amazing. And I'm going, that was the first thing they had ever written, I think, or one of the first things.
Yeah, it happened at a kid's track at a writing conference.
And I'm going, "Mac, can I have everything else you write from here on out?" You know, they were so talented and didn't really even fully understand what they had. But those kids are going to really be something to watch in the future.
Yes.
And it makes me so happy because that's exactly how I started out.
Exactly.
You know, I was that age just getting started.
We were at Carnegie Hall for a premiere in November this year, a Christmas thing. And who's playing piano in the house band but Mac Duran?
No way.
Wow.
Yeah. And I thought back. And something else happened pretty neat. And Dusty, you appreciate this because of your love for writers and song stories. But there's the lady who wrote when the answer is no, Bernadette Negus,
sweet lady,
drove down from New York to be at that conference to hear you sing.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And
That's right. I met her for the first time there.
And sometimes artists don't realize, I think probably more artists than not are like me as far as, I want somebody to do my song. They can take it where I can't. I've heard me sing. It's just not going to go anywhere if I sing it. But there's something about every writer that needs to be confirmed on some level. And as you've gotten to be more of a songwriter, you've experienced that too when someone else has done a song, because you go, they had 10 slots or they had 9 slots and they chose my song over a Dottie Rambo song or a Bill Gaither song. And that's about as sweet as it gets. So for her, one of my favorite pictures, and I still have it on my phone, is taken of Bernadette and her husband, and he's got his arm around her, and they're sitting and listening to you sing. And I just thought,
that's so cool.
As a publisher, that's a pretty sweet payoff too.
Yeah.
That's
well, awesome. It takes everybody to bring a song to the people. It takes the writer, it takes the publisher, and then it takes the artist. All of those people have to work together as a team to send that idea ultimately to the people who it's written for. And all of those people are important.
Sure. And
that's a great thing to see.
An email last night from a writer that, I probably have to edit this out too, but he said, I saw you last year and you told me this song might make a good song, so you can go ahead and get started on it. And I'm thinking, it was a good song at that moment. And the seasons change, and Dusty, you sit in those meetings all the time where you go, this was a great song for where that artist was or where the market was last year.
It's one of the hardest things. I mean, especially when you have song meetings that are maybe 4 weeks, and then you maybe another 7 weeks, 8 weeks. It's really hard. All of a sudden, you think, oh, I love that song back then, but this one speaks a little bit different today. So.
And I can remember being in the studio with J.D. Summer and the Stamps years ago, and we'd gone through all that process. Norman Holland was A&R, and we'd sit and listen to songs with J.D. and the group and get the list that we thought was right. And then at tracking day, Ronnie Henson would just walk in
and say, I have a song.
And say, hey, I got a song for it. And he'd sing it with and everybody go, let's cut that.
Yeah.
So horrible.
And I've done that. And that's, people ask all the time, where do you get your songs? How do you find your songs? Do you write them all yourself? No, I wish I could, but it never happens that way. I will take a great song from wherever I can find it. I don't care who wrote it. I don't care what genre it came from. Once I sing it, I feel like it's mine. And maybe I shouldn't, but once I sing it, I feel like it's going to become an LT song. It's going to sound the way I would do it. It's going to become its own thing. And if the best song for my record is something that I've written, great. If it's something that somebody else has written, that's great too. I just want the best song, and I don't care if it's mine or not.
Can I quote you on that?
Yes.
Next time you record.
Absolutely can.
That's a great artist to me. That's a great artist.
But a lot of artists will say that too.
And then
and we've all seen, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but when you do take one and you own it like you do, then nobody else is going to want to do it because you bring such a personality to it.
Yeah.
Well,
so I would ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when you started singing, how old were you when you did the first record? 12?
13.
13, okay. So at that point, you were raised, and Dusty and I talk about this, my kids would know a good song better than a lot of publishers because they've grown up, we talk about it. We hear one, we talk about it.
Yeah.
And you had been around that same example, so you talked about songs, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. When you got to pick the first songs that you recorded as a 13-year-old, did they let you pick that, or did they say, here, I think this would be a good one for you?
I had a lot of input very early on, probably more than most kids that age would have. I'm not sure if that was a good thing or not, but that's the way it was. Back then, I was listening for the music, the style of it. I wanted to sing something fun that I thought sounded good, like any 13-year-old would. But I clearly remember the first song that I ever went to Mom and Dad and said, I really, really, really want to do this song. It was, He's the only reason I live, but oh, what a reason.
That's a good song.
I love that song. And Mom and Dad, and you guys will understand this, and it's valid. They were like, yeah, but that song's been cut. It's out there. And and I said, I don't care. I want to do it anyway. And so I had to fight for it a little bit. Yeah. But we ended up cutting it, and I sang it. And it really became a very personal statement for me at that time in my life. And I think it was important for me to record that statement at that time because it really cemented in my mind why I was doing what I was doing. And if I could tell any artist anything, especially a young artist, you need to find your why really, really, really early, as soon as possible. If you don't have a clear, concrete why you do, what makes you get on stage night after night, what makes you go through all the other stuff that you have to go through in life and still do what you're doing, you better have a concrete why or you're going to burn out really, really fast and you're going to lose your motivation. But I can clearly point back to a time in my life when I was 12 that I know God called me to serve him through, and at that time, he didn't mention anything about music. He just asked me if I was ready to serve him.
Right.
And I said yes to him. Didn't have a clue what he had in store for me. And in a lot of ways, I still don't. But this is what my service to the Lord has looked like for all these years. And that song, He's the only reason I live, but oh, what a reason, was such a big part of that. Because that went hand in hand for me with what He had called me to do. And that moment has carried me through a lot of hard times in my adult life. Life's going to hand you things that you don't plan on, that you don't have an answer for.
But wait.
That you're tempted to give up through.
You're an artist. You got no issues. You got no problems. I mean, is that right, Dusty?
I know people think that, but nothing could be further from the truth. We go through the same stuff that everybody else does.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's all right.
We go through the same stuff that everybody else does, but...
Call from code left.
Okay. We'll just wait a second.
No, I think we'll see what the message is and see if it's something we need
to do.
I wish it would be something from Marianne that you can laugh at.
What's funny about that, if you can't hear, there's a phone ringing where we're recording.
Yes.
And what's funny about that is I didn't know anybody still had a landline.
Oh,
Marianne does.
Marianne does. Marianne.
Okay, so we all go through stuff that is hard.
Yeah.
And man, you better have something besides a catchy melody to carry you through that. And that defining moment for me in my life where I knew God had a job for me to do has carried me through a lot of hard times because I know I have to keep going.
Sure.
Because my job isn't done. And
so I want to challenge you on something else.
Okay.
I already got you on your podcast. It didn't happen. So I ran into you and your mom, I think at, what's that mall in Knoxville?
Westtown Mall.
Westtown Mall. I don't know why we were all there, but
well, I know why I was there. I don't know why you were there.
I was there because I heard Deborah and you and your mom were walking in. I was walking out or something, and you started talking about a book that you were going to write someday.
I have done that.
I have not read it. I would love to read it.
I will make that happen. It's called Songs in the Night. Mm-hmm. It's a 10-step Bible study for people who are going through difficult times, who have been knocked down and they have no answer for it. And they're thinking, how do I get up out of this pit? Because I've been there. Anybody who's lived past the age of 12 has. It's just part of life. You're going to go through some stuff. But it starts with a study of Psalm 77. And it talks about, what do you do when you're at the bottom of the pit? How do you get back up out of it? And how do you heal, and how do you move on? And at the time that I wrote it, I was battling a lot of chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, just a lot of physical things that anxiety and depression kind of went hand in hand with. And anybody who's ever battled that knows that it's like being at the bottom of a hole, that you don't know how you're going to climb out of it. And so that book is a journey of healing from the inside out, and ultimately allowing other people to learn from what you've been through.
And I'm betting that as when you left, went out on your own, I mean, there's all kinds of learning curves, no matter if you grew up in the industry or not. Your parents' business relationships are there to a certain extent, but then you have to earn that again.
Yes.
And then I'm betting you're speaking at ladies' conferences, things that you couldn't have done with the family. Is that correct?
I started doing that a little bit when I was still with the family. My solo career kind of started gradually, which I'm glad for, because it was not as abrupt a transition as it could have been. I didn't have to get thrown into the deep end. I started venturing out there gradually. So the speaking started after I wrote that book, and so I gradually did more and more. But there is no substitute for your safety net is gone. Now it's all you. Here we go. This is for real now. When we actually knew that the Talleys were going to retire well before we made the announcement, but we wanted to be absolutely sure that it was the right time, that everybody was in agreement. We all knew that this was what the Lord wanted us to do at this time. And so I was terrified. I knew it was what I was. Yes, I knew it was what I was supposed to do. I knew I was supposed to be a solo artist, but that does not change your fears of, all the little voices in your head come out. Oh my gosh, nobody's going to book me. Nobody's going to like me without mom and dad. And I'm just going to be falling off into nothing. You have all of those things going through your head. But I knew I had to do it. And so I just took a big dive off the deep end. And I am so blessed that I did have that launching pad of the family to jump off of. So I wasn't completely starting from nothing. But to me, it felt like nothing. But people were so kind to me. I thought I would spend the first 2 years just explaining why mom and dad weren't there. But it really didn't happen that way. And I was so blessed that people got behind me. They were so encouraging to me. And
that's great.
I was surprised to see the new audience that came along at that point. So now I would say that, I still have a lot of fans that followed me with the family, but I would say I have just as many now that
that's great.
Weren't there for that and have just come along in the last 3 or 4 years. So it's been a fun ride.
Who did your logo?
The LT logo?
That's awesome.
Thank you. A guy named Jared Myers that used to work for the Talleys, actually. He did he did websites and our social media, and he did our live sound and video. And so, he designed all that.
Well, I know
I'll have to tell him you like that.
You've got a videotape and you've got to get back to. And Dusty, what else you got?
I'd like to ask Lauren one other thing. What advice these young kids out there, these young people, these people who are getting ready to go on, so many of them come to your concerts, they listen to you. Tell them just a brief thing, because everybody thinks you come from this wonderful, perfect, great family group. What advice would you give those kids about where they're stepping into as they pursue their own dreams and their callings and what they want to do?
Well, I do come from a wonderful family, but there is no perfect family. Right. I mean, we've said that, everybody's got their own stuff. I would have to say, I'd have to answer that with a story. For most of my career, I have felt like, because I have been around this for so long, after a while you get to a point where you think, I know how to do this. I got this.
Yep, you're right.
But last year, 2023, I went through some pretty difficult things. And I was just really at a point where I needed some answers from the Lord in many different areas. I was frustrated in a lot of ways. Things that I felt should be happening professionally weren't happening like I had hoped, and it was a rough time. I was at the gym one day, and I was scrolling through my YouTube suggestions trying to find something to watch while I was working out, to take your mind off the fact that you're in pain.
Sure.
So I see this video on YouTube that says, "That moment from Passion 2024. If you're not familiar with the Passion Conference, it happens every January. Louis Giglio founded it. It's a conference mostly for Gen Zers, college student age, young adults. They come together for like a weekend and they hear speaking, they have worship. It's just a very intense time. I've never been to it, but I had heard of it, so I clicked on this video. And there's about 50,000 college students at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. And the worship team is up on stage singing Anya's Day. Holy, holy are you, Lord God Almighty, worthy is the Lamb. They sing it over and over again, and eventually it gets so thick in that room that the worship leaders stop singing and fell flat on their faces before the Lord.
Wow.
And the musicians stopped playing. And the whole stadium went silent. Nobody could move. And there in the back of the stadium, just a few voices started singing that refrain over and over again. And it spread all over the stadium.
Golly.
You got to go on YouTube and watch it.
I don't have to work out, do I?
No.
Okay.
You won't be able to move once you see this.
I can't.
They started singing. And they sang this refrain over and over and over again. It lasted about 20 or 30 minutes. And nobody could move in the presence of the Lord.
Wow.
And I realized, I'm walking on the treadmill watching this, and I realized I've got tears streaming down my face. And I said, Lord, I know something special is happening here. I want to understand it. I said, Lord, why don't we see this in our churches? And why don't I see that in my concerts?
Wow.
How do we get that? And he said, look at those worship leaders. They don't care who's watching. They don't care what song is coming next. They're not worried about how they look. They're not worried about the audience's response.
Yeah.
They are completely focused on me and nothing else.
Wow.
And then, Dusty, he said, if you'll just pursue my presence like that,
Goodness
I
sakes.
will take care of everything
Pursue my presence.
that concerns you.
Wow.
I said, okay. I kept walking and watching, and I thought, I'm not entirely sure how to do that, but I'm sure going to try.
Wow.
So I would tell not just artists, but anybody.
Good Lord.
Really, the only thing we have to do is just pursue Him.
Yes.
Pursue His presence in our everyday lives. Pursue His presence in our art, in our stagecraft, in whatever field we've been assigned to, whatever job description we've been given. Our only job is to pursue Him, pursue His presence, and make Him known. And He takes care of all that other stuff.
That's great.
None of that stuff even matters.
That's great.
Because one day when we get to heaven, that's all we're going to do anyway. We're going to fall on our faces before Him. And I learned a valuable lesson through that. I want so badly to walk on stage every night and kill it.
Yeah.
What artist doesn't?
No.
And I want people to clap, and I want the big hoorah standing. Oh, of course I do.
Yeah.
But if I will focus all my energy on pursuing him and making him known and helping that audience understand what it is to connect with Almighty God, if I do that night,
Wow.
that's all I've got to worry about.
I think we could take an offering right now. This is great.
That has changed everything about how I look at ministry and look at my job.
That's awesome.
And watching you, that's what I see.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
hope
because
so.
I spy on her. I creep on her page.
I
watch
really
her
do
stuff,
hope so.
and
I hope
that's
it
what
shows.
that's what I see with Lauren Talley.
You know, I would say I probably don't do that every time.
Yeah.
But I want to.
Yeah.
I desire to, and I try to. And when I don't, he's very quick to tell me.
So good.
This has been great.
Oh, man.
This has been awesome. And so when I texted Lauren last night and I said, yeah, I think we're all set up for night before last. I said, I said, no, you're going to be the first one where we use cameras. And she said,
Look how pretty she
I
is.
have a surprise.
Yes. I wore my
Which I
Dave
just
Clark
love.
T-shirt, baby.
I love
So
it.
when I saw you wearing that, I laughed and I said, that's not the first time you've worn that.
Oh no,
Because
it's so faded.
it's so faded. So
It's been washed many times. It's been well loved. Hey, but I got to show you all the back of it. That's the best part.
I just love it.
here we go.
I love it.
I don't know. Can you see?
Can you see it?
Okay, so that's pretty awesome, and that's a line that nobody gets except songwriters. So you brought a surprise. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I brought you a surprise too. So
Oh no, I love
Now
it.
I am scared.
I think I know
Dun,
what it is.
dun,
I
dun.
Let's see if I know what it is.
so you can't be wearing a faded out
It's a new
shirt.
It's a new t-shirt.
And,
That's
and,
awesome.
and there's a blue one with a different line.
Thank you.
That is the best.
And-
that is the best.
And you just never know.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Now we're talking.
Okay,
That's what I'm talking about.
that's the best.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so the back of the blue shirt says, songwriter, I'll write that bridge when I come to it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I love it. Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Thank you for coming and spending an hour with us.
Oh
and,
my gosh,
That's
it's been so
awesome.
much fun. I got to turn it around like
I
the
love
cool, like
the
the cool
hat.
kids do.
Yeah.
I think you're a little old for that.
I am. I definitely am. Hey, I'm hanging on as long as I can.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Dusty?
This is the reason why
We love to tell the story.
stories.
Yes.
Lauren, we love you.
I love you guys. Thank you so
It's
much
awesome.
for having me on.
Great.
It's been
Great.
fun.
Thank you. Oh, I love Lauren
We should
Talley.
do this for a living,
I
y'all.
love Lauren
That was
Talley.
cool.
Keith, what'd you think?
Great.
That was
That was
awesome.
awesome.
Lauren,
You know what?